question mark about where we grew up and that kind of thing. I grew up in a cafe in a small town near the confluence of the Kippaha and the Niobrara. That's the way we said it in our town, Kippaha. And storytellers in the cafe. My mother was a storyteller, so that's how I came by there. And it seems fitting in this gallery with the chickens, the paintings of those things, and paintings of the cows, particularly the cows, I'm struck by, to read this poem, which is about the women who milked the cows and all that other work that women did in my family tree. A lot of work to keep the family going. Women who milked the cows, women who gathered cobs to stoke the stove, to bake the bread. Women who quilted, who tied the knots in thread, who pulled the needle through the cloth. Theirs to wash the cups and plates, theirs the narrow bed, the sweaty nightly man. Theirs the bloody sheets, the groans, screams when the babies came, the swollen, painful breast, garden, kitchen, henhouse, barn, pancake, dumpling, noodle, flan, Rhoda, Martha, Lucy, Libby, Lena, Anne. So the poem with a listing of their names, which I got the idea for that from the poem that you heard Ted read, the names of horses. So I invite you, when you write your poem or your memoir, put in a list of the names. And one thing that is disappearing from the agrarian landscape, fading away, is that one finger wave. You know the one finger wave? You keep your hand on the wave. This is called one finger wave. I say silly things like, "Hi, honey," to the full moon. "Good to see you again." An interstice, a greeting between wayfarers, like the one finger wave between ranchers on the highways through the sandhills of Nebraska. A cattle truck loaded with Angus going south meets my car going north. Our windshields face one another, and at the proper moment, the precise distance, my hand still on the wheel, I raise my index finger, and the stranger will do the same, as if to say, in our most solitary orbits, we are sometimes not alone. So how's this microphone? Am I about to write this in time? Ted talked about keeping people alive. Mrs. Otto, who was a very quiet man, my father's uncle, he was a bachelor farmer. Otto, who stood at the edge of family pictures, the moving shade of the oak tree watching his face, whose hands held his gray felt hat behind him, rolling the brim toward the sweatband, whose brown suit grew season by season too large, each harvest inching farther down on his wrists toward the large nubs of his knuckles, whose skin on his high cheekbones shone in the light from the window when they figured God's acre on the tablecloth, whose voice caught at the start of his sentences, like a plow settling into a new furrow, who did not sing in church, his very clean hands folded over his knees, who on summer afternoons poured cold coffee into his white cup, who said he liked it, who owned a bed in his brother's farmhouse, no flop-eared brown dog running to the gate ever known as Otto's, no pipe, no international, no bad jokes, no 22, no girl as far as anybody ever said, no child of his crying or sleeping on the second floor in a dark house, who before reaching up for his hat on the nail above the separator would stand mornings at the screen door, his hands in his back pockets. So I understand that way a lot of times. And here, he was a quiet man, but here's one who was what we used to call a talker. He was the guy at the gas station. Somebody had mentioned going to Europe, and that gets him started. Man at the Derby Star. I knew this guy once, went to Europe, supposed to go with 3 girls. They chickened out, so he went by himself. Takes a lot of guts, not knowing the language. You take your vacations. Some people drive to the Grand Canyon, get out, take their picture in front of their car. They get back, they say, "Want to see my pictures?" Me, I drive out of the county once in a great while. I throw a beer can out of the car, come back, that's my vacation. Heard on the radio, the average man dies at the age of 69. The average woman lives to 72. Wonder why that is. Of course, you take your averages. You stand one leg in a bucket of hot water, the other in cold. On the average, you should be comfortable, but you're not. And I'll end with this poem about some sisters who grew up together on a farm. Then they moved to the city, and in their old age, they get together to play cards in the wintertime. The sisters play canasta in a snowstorm. The one who can drive picks up each sister at her door, keeps the Pontiac chugging in each driveway, while one or the other slips into her overshoes and steps out, closing her door with a click, the wind lifting the fringe of her white cotton scarf as she comes down the sidewalk, pulling on her new polyester Christmas stockings. We have no business out in such a storm, one says, no business at all. But the wind takes her voice and swirls it like so much snow across the windshield. We're on to the next house, the next sister. At the last house, we play canasta. The deuce is wild, even as they were in childhood. The wind blowing through the empty apple tree, through the shadows of bumper crops. The cards line up under the sisters' finger bones, 8s and 9s and aces straggle and fall into place like well-behaved children. They shuffle and meld, they laugh like crazy, as they did in that farmhouse years ago. That day, Margaret draped a dish towel over her face to answer the door. We put her up to it, they say, laughing. We pushed her. The man, whoever he was, drove off in a huff while they laughed till they hiccuped. Laughing still. They're rascals, sure as farmyard dogs. They're wild card players. The snow thickens, the coffee perks. And nothing is lost if it can be retold. We're getting up there in the years, one or the other says. We'll have to quit sometime. But today, deal, sister, deal.
Well, that was wonderful to hear the poetry and to experience the poetry. I think art, poetry, and fine art, we heard that words, the poetry a lot of times is to help keep a person alive or keep an idea alive, if you remember something. It's basically kind of the same thing that art, fine art, much of fine art does the same thing. That artists get to experience life twice. Once when they live it, and once when they play it back for us again in a painting, or a poem, or a piece of music.